Part 47. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 462. Near the north, in a small country called Suan country. Two rare outsiders came to Uncle Zhang's home. "Old man, I heard that the house next to your house is going to be rented out." The old man looked at the source of the sound with some confusion, but was stunned for a moment. There has been no flow of people in this remote Kishan town for a long time, so there is a room in the yard next to the house. For such a long time, I haven't been able to rent it out several times. Although there are big signs saying it is rented to passing tenants, few people come all year round. Even if there are occasional people, they are mostly decrepit returnees. This was the first time he saw such a young man and woman, and more importantly, even though the two people in front of him were wearing simple coarse linen clothes, the old man's eyesight was not very good, but he could still detect the extraordinariness of the two people at a glance. The man's facial features are handsome and his eyebrows are like swords. One look at him can tell you that he is extraordinary. The woman was even more shocked. The simple light gray clothes only have a little fold at the lower end that can barely be regarded as a skirt. But this coarse linen garment, worn only by poor people, was bound by a silk thread and immediately outlined a perfect and graceful curve. The flawless and beautiful cold face was not degraded in the slightest by the simple clothes, but instead revealed an extraordinary temperament. "Are you sure you want to rent my shabby house?" For a while, old man Zhang was stunned for a long time. "Yes, but we may only need a loan for 1 day. Isn't it possible that the number of days is too short?" Chu Qingyu's voice was like the curl of fairy music. "It's okay, it's absolutely okay. But old man, I always feel that you are definitely not ordinary people. Logically speaking, you should never fall in love with my little shabby house." Old man Zhang seemed to have big question marks written all over his face. Generally speaking, people of noble birth don't even live in a shabby house, and they don't even come back to such a remote place. What on earth is going on? If the two of them weren't wearing the coarse linen clothes worn by ordinary people, he would have suspected that they were gods from the mountain descending to earth. How is that possible? "Uncle, you are definitely wrong." Nai Chen immediately waved his hands in embarrassment. "After all, we promised to experience the life of ordinary people for a day, so we couldn't be recognized right away before we even started. Is the recognition between myself and the Empress that high? Well, it seems really." But when he looked at Chu Qingyu, whose appearance could be called a disaster to the country and the people, Nai Chen suddenly realized what it meant to be truly unsullied, naturally beautiful and outstanding. This extremely simple dress not only did not make Chu Qingyu appear ordinary at all, but it only enhanced her superior temperament. "Misunderstanding, my wife and I are just ordinary refugees." Nai Chen could only explain with full embarrassment. "I see it's written on the old man's house that it costs 20 copper coins a day, so I'll temporarily rent it for a day." As he spoke, he rummaged in his pockets. But soon, Nai Chen looked a little embarrassed. Because, although there are large pieces of spiritual stones and gold bars on the body, but Nai Chen really didn't have any of the cheapest currency, copper coins. Oops, I ignored this question. After rummaging for a long time, Nai Chen finally found a large gold ingot that was the lightest in weight, weighing only about 50 taels, and shining with golden light. There is really no small money left. "Uncle, can you think of this? If you really can't find it, there is no need to look for it. But please don't get me wrong, my wife and I are really just refugees in distress. This piece of gold, well, I just randomly picked it up on the road." Uncle Zhang. Although he is old, he feels that he is not stupid yet. After a long while, Nai Chen and Chu Qingyu took the keys and opened the dilapidated door. The old man Zhang just couldn't find it, so in the end he had to give away a lot of rice noodles and ingredients, which saved the two of them the trouble of going shopping. The only problem is, why do you always feel that this ordinary day starts out a little unusual? Is there any? It was just an accident. Generally speaking, it should be relatively ordinary. Nai Chen laughed twice. But no matter how it starts, after officially settling down, it is indeed time to enter the life you deserve. But what is the life of ordinary people really like? I heard that men farm and women weave. By the way, men farm and women weave. Men would get up early to farm when they heard the crow of chickens, while women would stay at home or in the field sewing and mending. After a day, a hearty dinner and sleep can clear away the fatigue of the whole day. The sun rises and sets, and the sun sets. This ordinary day is the most common life for thousands of ordinary people. Nai Chen immediately started rummaging around in the tool room of the dilapidated house with some excitement. Unexpectedly, although this dilapidated house has been abandoned for many years, it is small but has all the internal organs. Farming utensils and textile supplies are still preserved. Picking up the hoe, Nai Chen walked towards a small piece of land in the courtyard that had been abandoned for a long time. But when Chu Qingyu got the needle and thread, she seemed a little confused. She soon discovered that she had all the needles and threads, but there were no rags at all. Although the clothes on both of them were simple and crude, they were all just bought. Simplicity is definitely simplicity, but it definitely has nothing to do with broken characters. Well, honey, what can I do for you? Aware of the eyes behind him, Nai Chen turned around, but soon noticed Chu Qingyu's confused eyes. In the past, Empress Qingyu would not hesitate in deciding the fate of a sect or even an entire empire. At this moment, he was staring at the needle and thread in his hand and hesitating around him, his eyes like a pool of spring water full of little entanglements. Such a cute scene immediately made Nai Chen, who was holding a hoe in his hand, laugh. You can put the farming matter aside for now, but your wife can't ignore it. But it seems that there are indeed no clothes. Looking at the sharp corner of the wooden fence next to him, Nai Chen suddenly became anxious and wise. Oops, I accidentally scratched it. With an exclamation of surprise, Nai Chen seemed to be extremely careless as he passed by the wooden fence, and his clothes were immediately torn by a sharp point. Hiss, it looks like such a big hole needs to be repaired. I will continue farming, and I will leave the stress to you, my wife. As if he didn't do anything, Nai Chen took off his shirt and handed it to Chu Qingyu with a playful smile. You guy. Looking at Nai Chen, who had his upper body bare and handed the tattered clothes to his hands, Chu Qingyu snorted, and her cold face was immediately amused into smiling. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 463. Isn't it a pleasure to learn and practice it from time to time? Isn't it a pleasure to have friends coming from afar? Isn't it a gentleman to not be angry when others don't know you? I examine myself 3 times a day. Am I unfaithful when I work for others? Am I untrustworthy when I make friends? Do I practice what I have learned? In the distance of the town, Mr. Chen was walking with a dozen children to study. The town was too quiet, even a little lifeless, but the voices of these children were still full of youthful vigor. There were almost no young people in the whole Kishan town, and the only teacher left was Chen Pu, who failed the exam in his early years. After teaching in the town for more than 10 years, Chen Pu's status in the town has become very high in the eyes of ordinary people, and he has always been respected as Mr. Chen. Over the years, Chen Pu has not been reserved with his students, and he has taught every child with all his knowledge. He can be regarded as a rare good teacher. But for some aspects of his ideas, Chen Pu seems a little extreme. You've memorized quite well. I didn't expect you to memorize so well just after I taught you yesterday. It seems that you've studied hard after you went home. After listening to the children's recitation, Chen Pu praised them. But when he accidentally saw the farmers working on the mountain, his mood suddenly became worse. After failing the exam, Chen Pu was disheartened and returned to Kishan town to become the only teacher. Although he no longer had any desires, he could not accept one thing anyway. That is, the students he had worked so hard to teach will work like ordinary farmers in the future, rest at sunset, and spend their lives in a daze. After all, if this is really the case, what is the point of his hard teaching? As time went by, Chen Pu's idea became more and more intense, and his views on this matter gradually became extreme. Looking at the farmer who took a big bite of the steamed bun next to the field and then hoed the field in sweat, Chen Pu sighed and finally felt that he could not bear it anymore. He looked at the dozen students around him, and his voice seemed a little low. Although you study harder than I thought, there are still some things that need to be remembered. Please speak, sir. The students immediately raised their heads seriously, their eyes full of desire for knowledge. Following Mr. Chen, they had the only learning opportunity in the town, and they obviously cherished this rare and precious opportunity. But it was slightly different from what they thought. Today, Chen Pu did not teach them anything about learning, but said, "If you have the ability, I hope you can remember it. As a scholar, you should stay away from the kitchen and the ordinary life of farmers. Those mediocre days have no meaning for your life development." Huh. Hearing this, the children were also a little stunned. After studying with Chen Pu for so long, it was the first time they heard the teacher say such strange words. After a long time, a lively little boy raised his voice of objection. "No, sir, but my parents have told me since I was a child that there is nothing wrong with ordinary life. Especially when I get married one day, the man farms and the woman weaves, and they are happy. Although that sweet life is plain, it is also very beautiful." The boy opened his eyes wide, and he obviously had some yearning for the life he was talking about. Wrong, very wrong. However, Chen Pu was a little angry when he heard this. He couldn't tolerate that the students he had taught with great difficulty were instilled with such ideas by their farmer parents. Ordinary life is not as beautiful as you imagine. What is the man farming and the woman weaving happily? What is the ordinary life without worries? All these things are impossible. Especially the love between men and women, once it involves firewood, rice, oil, and salt. The last bit of fig leaf will be torn off in an instant, and will only be gradually swallowed up by irritability and anger in the poor life. Chen Pu's voice was obviously a little angry. Even the children who had been following him had never seen such a demeanor. Is what the teacher said true? Both the boy and the other children did not dare to speak for a while, and they even doubted their parents' teachings in their hearts. But at this moment, as they passed by a low and dilapidated old house, Chen Pu and the children's eyes seemed to be suddenly attracted. This dilapidated house was vacated by Mr. Zhang's family. For some reason, the dilapidated house that had always been idle was rarely occupied. More importantly, a small sea blue bell was hung on the low fence. As the wind blew, the bell swayed in the wind, making a clear and pleasant sound. The sound of the bell floated in the air, and for a moment, it actually set off this dilapidated house and courtyard with a different meaning. Not only that, facing the morning sun. On the wasteland in the courtyard that had been abandoned for a long time, a naked man raised a hoe, dropped it from high, and cultivated the land with one hoe after another. Right beside him, a woman who was dressed in plain gray clothes but looked very beautiful from behind was patiently mending the torn clothes in her hands. Ouch! This was Chu Qingyu's first experience of mending with ordinary needles and thread. Although she was very smart, she still accidentally pierced her finger with a needle. Suddenly, a drop of blood oozed from the white tip of her index finger. This little pain is nothing to her. Chu Qingyu originally planned to wipe off the small drop of blood on her finger casually. But she found that Nai Chen had hurriedly thrown down the hoe and ran over. "Why are you so anxious? I am a great emperor and I won't care about this pain. Chu Qingyu couldn't help but smile. Whether it hurts or not is one thing, but safety is another. This is not like the spiritual Tianyun Palace. If you accidentally drop some debris, it may even cause infection to the wound. However, Nai Chen said very seriously. Really? As a great emperor, Chu Qingyu naturally couldn't care about these little things on weekdays. But why do I always feel that Nai Chen's tone of voice is really scary? Then what should I do? I should eliminate the germs. Eliminate the germs. That's right. Before Chu Qingyu could react, Nai Chen suddenly pulled her finger. Then, with a gentle suck, Nai Chen sucked the small drop of blood directly, leaving a trace of spiritual power to cover the wound on the fingertip. You. Chu Qingyu's pretty face immediately showed a trace of panic. She had never expected this situation. Haha, this is the most traditional way of protection, definitely not taking advantage of the opportunity. With a reckless smile, Nai Chen had already hurriedly run away and picked up the hoe again. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 464. The early morning sunshine softly falls on the earth. Not long after, Nai Chen had dug out a pile of small pits neatly on the barren land. Although this small field has been abandoned for a long time, the soil quality is surprisingly good. So after the hard work of weeding just now, this land has become suitable for farming. Nai Chen took out a handful of crystal clear green seeds from his arms. According to the rule of placing 3 or 4 in each soil pit, throw the seeds in order and bury a layer of soil on top. This is the wisdom from farmers. Not every seed will germinate, but putting 3 or 4 of them into a pit can generally guarantee that at least one seedling will thrive. The dug soil pits were gradually filled up, and the mounds of soil used to bury the seeds were filled up high, forming neat and uniform field ridges. There are seeds buried under the soil, and the sun shines softly on them. This scene immediately makes people feel quite accomplished. There is no life and death struggle with the powerful emperor, nor is there the gratification and grudges of competing for treasures in the secret realm. This kind of ordinary life surprisingly makes people immersed in it. Nai Chen held the hoe upright and leaned his elbow on the wooden pole of the hoe. Feeling the morning breeze pass by, I feel quite good. But at this moment, he suddenly noticed that the figure of Chu Qingyu who had been weaving nearby was missing. Because he was too focused on farming just now, Nai Chen completely ignored this issue. Oops, where's the wife? He quickly planned to use his spiritual sense to explore the surroundings. But just as his spiritual consciousness emitted, Nai Chen suddenly felt a chill in his back. It turned out that Chu Qingyu secretly hid her aura and hid behind herself without going anywhere. Nai Chen suddenly remembered that he had just taken the opportunity to suck the wound on the Empress's finger and tease her. I thought the vengeful and petty Empress was planning to come back for revenge. He turned around quickly and explained in a hurry. Ahem, honey, what I did just now was really just to help you avoid bacterial infection, absolutely not. But the moment he looked behind him, Nai Chen's voice stopped abruptly. Because Chu Qingyu's demeanor and actions were completely different from what he imagined. You have been working for so long, you must be very tired. Drink a bowl of water. A breeze swept by, slightly blowing the simple light gray dress. Chu Qingyu's 3,000 green hair like a waterfall swayed gently in the wind, and her cheeks carried a touch of unspeakable affection. As he slowly handed a bowl of water to himself, he turned his head away in embarrassment. I originally wanted to make mung bean porridge for you, but the things in the house are too basic. There are no ingredients or tools at all. So, I can only bring this bowl of water. There seemed to be some small self-blame, Chu Qingyu explained in a small voice. But even though Nai Chen, who had seen the Empress' cute scenes every day and was already quite determined, felt as if his heart had been hit at this moment. The simple clothes and the complete lack of makeup on her face only accentuated her pure and beautiful beauty, which was as pure as ice and snow. Especially the shy and warm demeanor of the Empress delivering water at this moment. Nai Chendang took the water without hesitation and drank it all in one gulp. Well, this water tastes really sweet. The clean water at the entrance seems to have just been brought from the bottom of the well. This purest natural well water tastes surprisingly good. Nai Chen held out his thumb and praised without hesitation. Humph, that's good. Hurry up and continue working. I still need to mend your clothes. Otherwise, it would be unsightly for you to keep your upper body naked like this. Who would have thought that a powerful emperor would pick up a hoe with no shirt and work hard in a remote town? Chu Qingyu couldn't help but smile slightly, and ran her cool fingers across Nai Chen's skin. The strong muscles felt so good that she couldn't help but press them a few times. But just as she was about to leave, the cold and bone-chilling feeling suddenly made Nai Chen's head feel hot, and he couldn't help but grab the delicate jade hand. What are you going to do? Chu Qingyu suddenly showed a little panic. I'm a little tired and want to take a rest. Nai Chen smiled. Rest? Drinking water, doesn't it count as rest? That's just physical rest, but also a little mental rest, right? With a subtle smile on his lips, Nai Chen gently hugged Chu Qingyu directly into his arms. That soft and delicate body seemed as cold as ice after just being tired. It was completely opposite to the fiery aura exuding from his own body. The feeling of being held in my arms can already be described as having an excellent hand feel. Hey, it's broad daylight. She never expected Nai Chen's sudden move, and Chu Qingyu suddenly felt like a deer in her heart. He wanted to escape, but for some reason he couldn't move his body. There was even some inexplicable expectation as to what Nai Chen wanted to do. But at this moment, Nai Chen suddenly leaned down and kissed the snow-white forehead gently. Like a dragonfly touching water, after the kiss, he quickly retreated and retracted his arm. Huh? Is this done? Chu Qingyu's expression remained stagnant for a while. What if? I thought you wanted to. Halfway through, Chu Qingyu suddenly realized that she seemed to have said something wrong, and hurriedly covered her mouth lightly in panic, trying to pretend that she had said nothing. But this scene had already been seen by Nai Chen. The Empress was thinking about this. She just kept saying that it was daytime. I didn't expect the Empress to be so bold. No, the Emperor definitely didn't think about that kind of thing. It's just. After all, there have been several battles in a row, and there has not even been a chance to be alone with Nai Chen recently. Chu Qingyu didn't expect that the random thoughts in her mind would accidentally appear. Her cheeks immediately turned pink with shame, and she picked up the clothes she was mending with shame and anger, trying to block Nai Chen's gaze. Nai Chen couldn't help but laugh, and hurriedly coughed twice, comforting him. Ahem, actually I didn't mean it. I just think that it's better to work at sunrise and rest at sunset at night. Lolialo, I won't listen. Hurry up and work, otherwise, you won't have food to eat at night. You won't even be allowed to sleep in bed. But Chu Qingyu had covered her ears, as if she didn't want to listen to Nai Chen's quibbling. She picked up the needle and thread and clothes in shame and anger, and hurriedly ran behind the tree to continue mending, pretending to ignore Nai Chen. The clear autumn eyes were clearly bullied like waves, full of resentment. In the shabby and simple courtyard, for a moment, it seemed that it was completely filled with a sweet atmosphere. Mr. Outside the courtyard, Chen Pu and the students around him, who had almost witnessed the whole scene just now, were stunned and stood there. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 465. Sir, what did you just say? What Mr. just said seems to be that no matter what kind of love it is, once it involves money, life, daily necessities, it will become vulnerable. But the students' ideas have already been affected to a certain extent. But what they saw in front of them unexpectedly changed their thoughts in an instant. Such a simple house, two people dressed simply. But the deep love between men farming and women weaving, working hard is far more sincere and warm than the beautiful love they read in books. Is what you said really right? No, I should say, it seems that even Mr. He looked at Mr. Chen with some trepidation. The students soon discovered that even Chen Pu, who had just said those words without any hesitation, had no difference in his dull eyes at this moment. Does this sweet and sincere love really exist? He has always buried his cynicism in the books of sages and suppressed his emotions deep in his heart. But at this moment, Chen Pu's heart seemed to suddenly change. Since returning to Kishan town after failing the exam, he has seen too many changes in human relationships and vicissitudes of life. Different situations gave Chen Pu completely different ideas. He once only hoped to be at the top of high school, stand out, and pursue the beautiful life he had imagined in his heart. But after failing the exam, although life in the small town was dull and simple, it also allowed him to see a world that was different from before. I have witnessed too many families separated by food, rice, oil, and salt, and too many ideals that have been torn apart by the real world and become worthless. In Chen Pu's heart, he had already lost hope for this world. Even though he might be able to use his former status as a scholar to find a job in the home of a wealthy man in the city and live a life far beyond his current one. But Chen Pu, who has seen through many things, has no interest in those things. In his eyes, there is no real beauty in the world. Especially the most fragile love, any simple storm can easily defeat it. Desire is intentional, and there shouldn't be any true love in the world. What's more, this small town is so dilapidated that even eating has become difficult. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Chen Pu would never believe it. Farming the deserted fields and sewing on broken chairs with only 3 legs left. There can be such a sweet and beautiful love between those two people. Does all this really exist? Exist. The facts seem to be speaking in Chen Pu's ears. Sir, are you okay? Gradually realizing something strange about Chen Pu, the children next to him raised their heads and cast concerned glances. Although they were confused about what happened, they could not fully understand it. But it can be felt that Mr. Chen's heart seems to be very complicated. Well, don't worry about me. Chen Pu nodded silently, feeling a little confused for a moment. Then what the gentleman just said? The children raised their heads involuntarily, with a bit of desire for knowledge in their eyes. The child's eyes were pure and flawless, just like the true love he had seen just now. Listening to the voice coming from his ears, Chen Pu finally raised a slight smile at the corner of his mouth. He couldn't help but touch the head of the boy next to him and looked at the dilapidated courtyard in the distance. Finally, with a somewhat self-deprecating smile, he said, "What I just said was wrong." "Sir, you can actually be wrong. In this small town where few people can read or write, Chen Pu's existence is unique. As the only teacher, in the eyes of the children, his figure always seemed to be extremely majestic and tall. The words he spoke and the books of saints he read seemed to have never been wrong. Every word he said seemed to be the truth taught by sages. The children never thought that their husband would make mistakes and admit his mistakes himself. That's right, no one is a saint, how can anyone be without faults? I make mistakes too, and I make more mistakes than you think. As the only gentleman in town." At this moment, Chen Pu did not hide his mistake at all and said it frankly. He raised his head and glanced at the sky, which was as blue as the sea but unchanging. As if seeing the truth he had always longed for, Chen Pu raised his head and smiled. In his smile, there was a sense of comfort and sadness that he had never experienced before. "I was wrong, and what I just said is totally wrong. Although you study with me, you know more than ordinary people, and the darkness you see is more despairing than they do. But no matter what happens in the future, you must remember it. There are beautiful things in this world, and there has always been beautiful love. Maybe you haven't been able to see it, but maybe it has always been there. Got it? Yes, sir, we understand. This emotion made the children feel a little confused. With the knowledge they have learned now, they still cannot understand the true meaning of Chen Piyu's words. But they could feel that Chen Piyu was extremely serious when he spoke. Come to Beijing to take the exam. After so many years, maybe there is really a chance this time. Look at the children around you. Since failing the exam and returning to town, Chen Piyu, who had almost never smiled, inexplicably raised his mouth slightly at this moment, revealing a smile and confidence he had never had before. Time passed slowly, and the small, shabby courtyard seemed to have always been dull. As the sun gradually set in the west, Nai Chen finally put down the hoe in his hand. Wiping his forehead with the back of his hand, he found that his emperor's body was sweating, which was extremely rare. Unexpectedly, he worked tirelessly for a whole day. Looking at the fiery red sunset in the courtyard, Nai Chen suddenly felt his stomach growling. It seems to be time to eat at this time. Nai Chen couldn't help but whisper softly. At this moment, he suddenly found that the shabby chimney had been rising with smoke. With her back to the setting sun, a graceful figure walked out of the house with lotus steps and waved. You've been tired all day, come back for dinner, my husband. The slightly shy voice of the beautiful woman echoed in the sky, and under the reflection of the fiery sunset, the small courtyard was filled with a bit of warmth and happiness. Nai Chen couldn't help but smile from the bottom of his heart, feeling extremely warm in his heart. I know, my wife, I'll be there soon. Waving his hand in a very good mood, Nai Chen immediately threw away the hoe and happily prepared to start dinner. No wonder I haven't seen the empress for a while. I didn't expect that she was secretly going to make dinner. The empress seems to have the potential to be a virtuous wife. Nai Chen couldn't help but sigh in his heart. SHH, what delicious food can the empress make? Braised pork? Steamed fish? Wait, that's not right. But suddenly, Nai Chen felt a chill on his back and realized that he seemed to have overlooked some serious problems. Shock, the love letter was sent to the empress by mistake. Author, Mozuzi. Chapter 466. Could it be, could it be? As a powerful emperor, Nai Chen, who had no fear in the face of thousands of troops, felt his heart tremble at this moment, and even trembled a little. After a tiring day, I just want to have a nice dinner. Only then did he suddenly recall that the meal cooked by the empress herself, was a delicacy that could directly send away the powerful emperor. Honey, forget it, I suddenly want to plow the land again, so I'd better stop eating it now. Nai Chen even felt cold sweat on his forehead. He quickly picked up the hoe and wanted to escape. You've been tired all day, and the sun is going down, so it's time to rest. Come into the house, it's time to eat. However, Chu Qingyu whispered softly, with an extremely gentle voice and gently pulled out Nai Chen's arm. Those Chuchukyu eyes were clearly filled with concern and tenderness. Empress Qingyu actually had such a tender and virtuous side, which made Nai Chen feel shocked. For a moment, his heart almost softened. But Nai Chen suddenly shuddered when he recalled the dark dishes the empress had made before. The mung bean porridge that the empress cooked casually could make her vomit blood, but if she made it seriously for dinner. Not to mention the powerful emperor may not be able to bear it at all. Empress, wife, no. Elegant butterfly. Nai Chen's voice with a hint of despair echoed in the courtyard, but he was still ruthlessly dragged into the house by the delicate jade hands. Fortunately, Mr. Chen, who was leading the students, had an epiphany and left. Otherwise, I might have thought that a tragic murder of her husband had occurred. After a hard day's work, it's time to eat. Don't worry, the dinner I prepared today is delicious. You are the only one in the world who can enjoy this emperor's craftsmanship, so be content. Under the gently swaying candlelight, with a hint of resentment, Chu Qingyu brought Nai Chen into the room she had been preparing for a long time. On a low wooden table, 2 candles covered with light pink gauze were placed beside the table. The flickering candlelight filled the room softly, making the atmosphere of the whole room very warm. A few petals were dotted on the table, coupled with 2 precious wine glasses made of gold. The fragrance of the wine in the glasses was refreshing and mellow, making this apparently bare-walled house look rather high-profile and luxurious. It seems that the Empress's decoration and aesthetic standards are surprisingly good. Looking at the warm environment in front of him, even Nai Chen was in danger of ignoring it for a moment, and he couldn't help but sigh. I didn't expect you, my wife, to decorate quite well. Humph, that's natural, after all, even Tianyuan Palace was built according to this emperor's design. However, compared to decoration, I am most proud of my cooking skills. Just wait. After giving a playful smile, Chu Qingyu walked towards the kitchen confidently. Hey. The serious voice seemed to be trying hard to pick up the results of what she had been working on for an entire hour. No, no. Nai Chen suddenly felt a chill on his back. The environment of the bedroom is decorated extremely elegantly. If you don't pay attention to the dilapidated walls around it, it can even be compared to the elegant residences of wealthy people. But, after sniffing carefully, he could clearly smell burnt paste, rich acid, and a chilling, even indescribable smell in the air. What did the Empress do? Nai Chen quickly ran to the kitchen. However, the small kitchen was already filled with purple smoke, and the strange-colored smoke made the entire kitchen look even more terrifying. But through the thick purple smoke, Nai Chen could barely see clearly by opening his spiritual pupils. At this moment, Chu Qingyu held up a golden vessel engraved with the patterns of animals and completely golden. It was obvious at a glance that this golden vessel was an extremely precious treasure, but what it contained was exactly the source of the rich purple smoke. I saw indescribable objects rolling in the hot temperature in the purple viscous soup that was constantly bubbling. Some are viscous and surging, and some are roaring and wailing like demons. Nai Chen even dared to assert directly. Everyone below the emperor, no one who eats this dinner from the Empress will be able to escape. Why are you here? Don't worry, I can handle it all by myself. Seeing Nai Chen's sudden appearance, Chu Qingyu immediately smiled lightly and said in a very good mood. Don't worry about my cooking skills. Tonight's dinner is my innovation. It is carefully brewed with sweet candy, sour hawthorn, bitter melon, extra spicy chili, and our exclusive secret sauce. It is full of color and flavor, and all uses wild game picked from the mountains. It is simply the most creative dish I have ever made. If I hadn't wanted you to have a taste first, I would have been unable to bear it. Chu Qingyu raised the corners of her mouth triumphantly, obviously very satisfied with her masterpiece today. After all, who else in the world can make such a dish that is compatible with all kinds of flavors and can be called the pinnacle of innovation in the food industry? Just thinking about it, it must be delicious. With that said, Chu Qingyu took this pot of indescribable things and planned to take it out of the kitchen, etc. But Nai Chen immediately stepped forward to stop her. Ahem, wife, put these things aside for now. Let me cook dinner tonight. With that said, Nai Chen held both sides of the vessel and tried to take away the pot of dangerous things. It's not necessary. I've worked hard to make delicious food. You can just eat this tonight. Why do you need to make it again? Chu Qingyu was not willing to let Nai Chen take it away. That's not what I meant. Nai Chen was determined to explain how terrifying the ingredients in this pot were, but looking at the Empress's innocent and longing eyes, he couldn't bear to break her heart. What should After racking his brains for a long time, Nai Chen finally came up with an idea and comforted him softly. Although I also want to eat this pot of poison that you work so hard for, wife, delicious food. However, we are here to experience mortal life after all today. Even if we eat such a precious and delicious thing, we should wait until we return to Tianyun Palace. After finally experiencing ordinary life for a whole day, I will cook some ordinary dishes for dinner tonight. It seems to make sense, but this is a masterpiece that this emperor took great pains to create. Don't worry, wife, I will definitely keep these things and eat them later. Chu Qingyu was halfway through speaking when Nai Chen pushed her out of the kitchen with an awkward smile. No, they are all excuses. This emperor has obviously been doing this for a long time. Looking at the hurriedly closed wooden door, Chu Qingyu lowered her head, puffing up her cheeks slightly in anger, her eyes showing a bit of resentment and loss. But at this moment, the dilapidated wooden door of the kitchen suddenly creaked open again. Looking at the empress outside the door, Nai Chen smiled, stretched out his hand and touched the soft head that no one had ever dared to touch easily, and said with a gentle smile. Besides, who said my wife has to cook dinner? Just go back to the house and sit down, no matter how tired you are, as long as you want to eat, I will cook you the most delicious food every day. After saying that, the wooden door closed again with a creak. The sound of cooking and the smell of stir-frying soon came from inside. Cut. Looking at the old broken wooden door in front of her, Chu Qingyu snorted seemingly arrogantly. But the corners of his mouth couldn't help but raise slightly, with a warm smile of satisfaction. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 467. In the chimney, grayish-white smoke rose, as peaceful and tranquil as this already peaceful town. The aroma of food also filled the whole cottage with the sound of cooking, making Chu Qingyu feel her stomach growling just by sitting there. It's time to eat. The old, shabby wooden door of the kitchen creaked open. Nai Chen held a dish in one hand, and with a smile on his face, he brought the dishes that were still fragrant and hot to the table one by one. The lightly fried bamboo shoots still retained the emerald green color of the tender shoots. At a glance, you can feel that it is a rare and delicious dish that is crisp and not greasy. The mountain vegetables that were only washed without any extra processing were placed on the plate like blooming green flowers, and the sauce that had just been fried with eggs was placed next to the plate. The mushroom soup, which was slightly garnished with chopped green onions, was clear but not without richness, and the mellow aroma filled the whole house in an instant. These ingredients were just picked by Chu Qingyu when she went up the mountain during her free time. Although they were just stewed in a big pot like a devil, the remaining ingredients now played a completely different effect in Nai Chen's hands. It smells so good. There was a whole table of vegetarian dishes, and not even a trace of meat could be seen. Let alone the Tianyun Palace, dishes made with such simple ingredients would not even be allowed in ordinary secular palaces. But at this moment, these seemingly simple vegetarian dishes were made into a completely different feeling. Even Chu Qingyu couldn't help but glance at the table with some surprise, and it was hard to believe that simple green vegetables could be made so delicious. Let's eat, wife. With bowls and chopsticks and fragrant multi-grain steamed buns, Nai Chen also sat down next to Chu Qingyu. The simple clothes and the shabby house just happened to contrast with this table of simple vegetarian dishes. The difference is that the warm atmosphere in the room seems completely extraordinary. Multi-grain steamed buns can actually be so fragrant. Tentatively taking a bite of the multi-grain steamed bun that was far less pure and beautiful than white flour, Chu Qingyu's eyes suddenly lit up. Not only that. So delicious. This crispy and light feeling is the first time I have experienced it. Wow, I didn't expect wild vegetables to be a perfect match with this sauce. The taste of this mushroom is just like meat. Since she is not in the Tianyun Palace, she doesn't have to worry about being discovered by anyone. In the small room, Chu Qingyu did not hide her joy at all. Her cheeks, which used to be as frosty as ice, now seemed full of surprise and joy. Strange, why don't you eat? But soon, she found that Nai Chen not only did not move his chopsticks at all, but also kept looking at her with a smile. I can't help it, my wife, you are so cute that I can't turn my eyes away for a while. Nai Chen spread his hands, as if she was wrong. You. Cough, cough, cough. Chu Qingyu wanted to refute, but because her small mouth was filled with delicious food, she was choked. Before she could finish her words, she coughed continuously. Why are you in such a hurry to eat? Hurry up and drink some soup. This even looked a little silly and cute. How could it be like the arrogant existence feared by countless cultivators, Empress Qingyu? Nai Chen was also amused and quickly filled a bowl of mushroom soup and handed it to Chu Qingyu. Tisk, this emperor has all his limbs intact and doesn't need to be taken care of like a child. Suddenly noticing that his image seemed to be seriously damaged, Chu Qingyu quickly tried to restore his coldness and arrogance and glanced at Nai Chen. Then I'll take it? Who knew that this time Nai Chen became extremely decisive and took the mushroom soup away. Burp. After being choked again, Chu Qingyu suddenly panicked. Don't take it away, that's not what I meant. I mean, if it doesn't work, you can feed it to me, Woo, why did you take it even further? Burp, burp. No, I'm going to choke to death, my mushroom soup. Gudong. Just when Chu Qingyu thought she was going to choke, a spoon gently entered her mouth. With a gulp, the rich aroma of the mushroom soup lingered on her lips and teeth. A big mouthful of soup instantly rolled the choked bun into her stomach. It was fragrant and full, and that feeling made people feel very satisfied. Too much. Chu Qingyu puffed her cheeks slightly and stared at Nai Chen faintly. Nai Chen smiled as if he had expected it. Didn't you just say you didn't want to drink it, wife? I said I didn't want to drink it because... Oh. Then I took it away and drank it all. No, 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 the mushroom soup is so fragrant, I want to taste more. Haha, wife, can you be more reserved if you want to pretend? Your greedy nature is definitely exposed. Greedy? I'm not. The food smelled good, but compared to this delicious dinner, the quarrels and fights with laughter made the atmosphere sweeter. Before I knew it, the sun in the sky had already set in the mountains and rivers in the distance. But the fiery red sunset reflected by it looked even more vivid and beautiful. The two people who were laughing and playing in the house were attracted by the beautiful scenery outside at the same time. The sky was full of rosy clouds, and the sun was reflected in the red. It seemed to cast a different kind of tranquility and peace on the quiet and ordinary villa. So beautiful, so quiet. Unconsciously walking to the window and looking at the scenery outside together, Chu Qingyu couldn't help but hold Nai Chen's hand softly. The two didn't say a word, but they enjoyed this wonderful atmosphere together. Mountains, small towns, tranquility, sunset. Every scene seemed to be very close to the beauty of the world. Even the shoulders, one tall and one short, gradually leaned against each other. The soft 3,000 black hair fell into Nai Chen's arms, as fragrant as orchids. Together, they watched the sunset in the sky gradually sink to the west until it completely sank into the mountains. As the last ray of sunset completely disappeared, the hearts of the two seemed to become extremely peaceful. It's dark. Yes. I didn't expect the sunset in the mortal town to be so beautiful. However, let me ask you a small question, what kind of entertainment life do ordinary people have at night? Nai Chen's voice suddenly sounded beside Chu Qingyu's ears. What could it be? Chu Qingyu was slightly stunned for a moment, but couldn't think of anything. After all, many families don't have money to light candles at night, so what entertainment activities are there in the dark at night? Nai-Chen smiled, want to know the answer? I want to know a little bit. Chu Qingyu was full of curiosity because she couldn't think of the answer. Then let me tell you, it's actually, making a baby. Chu Qingyu. She suddenly felt that she seemed to be tricked. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 468. For ordinary people, they are reluctant to light candles after nightfall, and there are no entertainment facilities. After working hard all day and finally having a good meal and rest, they naturally seem to have only one thing to do at night. That is to contribute their own strength to expand the population of the dynasty and the future human pillars. In short, it means, make babies. Hey. Chu Qingyu's voice clearly carried a hint of embarrassment, trying to stop Nai-Chen. But Nai-Chen had already stepped forward. Huh. The candle on the table was blown out in an instant, and the whole room became completely dark in an instant. Looking at Chu Qingyu's eyes that still held a trace of reserve and pretended to be cold, Nai-Chen smiled and said. He, you still want to deceive me, my wife, you may have forgotten what you misunderstood in the afternoon. What did you misunderstand in the afternoon? Chu Qingyu suddenly recalled the scene by the field in the afternoon. At that time, she not only had a little expectation but also said that's it. Unexpectedly, at night, Nai-Chen really came to her. A ray of bright moonlight fell softly through the gap in the curtains, reflecting the ray of bright red that quietly appeared on her beautiful face. The clear eyes flowed, like ripples in autumn water. Anxious. She didn't make any other moves, but just pinched Nai-Chen's waist lightly with resentment. Empress, aren't you the same? Nai-Chen looked at her ears, which were as delicate as ingots but covered with red, with a look that seemed to see through her. I didn't. Suddenly, Chu Qingyu's cheeks became even redder. But with the help of the moonlight, staring at Nai-Chen's face, the simple and ordinary life she experienced that day seemed to echo in her mind at this moment. Warm and plain, but at the same time, it makes people feel endless warmth in their hearts. Chu Qingyu's eyes were dim, but she had already removed the defense line in her heart. Finally, she couldn't help but cover her cherry lips and chuckled. The moonlight sprinkled, making the creamy skin more white and pure, without a trace of flaws. The candlelight had long been extinguished, and the shabby little house was already a different scene. The beauty took off her silk clothes, her skin was as pink as peach blossoms. The moonlight sprinkled softly, and the sound of breathing came in waves. The soft voice with a hint of coldness was like the sound of an oriole, gentle and pleasant. In addition to this sweet and beautiful scene, the old bed kept making creaking sounds for some reason. Probably, it was unable to withstand the pressure of the powerful on earth. The town under the moonlight seemed to become more peaceful and beautiful at this moment. Old lady, could it be an earthquake? Why do I feel like the ground is shaking? Our broken house is not strong. If there is an earthquake, it can't withstand it at all. Old man Zhang next door suddenly woke up from his dream and pushed the old woman next to him in panic. He pulled her up and planned to run away without even wearing clothes. Huh? I don't think it's an earthquake, but it seems to be from. Mrs. Zhang, who was woken up from her sleep, reacted for a while, but her eyes fell on the wall beside her. After thinking for a while, she finally put her ear to the wall. I have never heard that an earthquake can be heard by ears. Don't listen, run quickly. Old man Zhang was so anxious that he jumped up and down, fearing that the house would collapse in the next second. But soon, looking around carefully, he suddenly realized that there seemed to be no signs of an earthquake. Even the vibrations he felt in his sleep just now seemed extremely weak. It couldn't be an earthquake at all, but it seemed to be, coming from next door? Old lady, did you hear anything? He asked hurriedly. Ahem, this. After listening carefully to the wall for a while, Aunt John quickly retracted her neck. She was stunned for a long time, sighing inexplicably with a subtle smile. These young people are really youthful. What youth? What did you hear? Let me hear it. Mr. John was full of doubts, and he couldn't understand why the old lady, who was usually outspoken, kept keeping things secret today and said nothing. But before he could get close to the wall, he was pushed away by Aunt John. Go to bed honestly, Aunt John glared at him. Ah! But I haven't heard it yet. Young people's privacy, what are you listening to? If you come closer, I'll strangle you to death. Old John. After being married for so many years, he has never seen his wife get so angry. Is there really no earthquake? No. Then what did you hear just now? Shut up and go to sleep. Old John had to lie down obediently. But he couldn't help but feel more and more confused. There was indeed no earthquake, but why do I always feel that the floor is shaking slightly with an orderly frequency today? I'm not going to pay attention to you. 3 hours passed, and Chu Qingyu, with a peach-like face and sweat dripping from her jade neck, murmured sadly. She shyly pulled the quilt over, turned her back to Nai Chen and slept on the other side. For some reason, she could clearly feel that Nai Chen's strength seemed to be improving at a very fast speed. So much so that she could barely match him. But after exhaling a slightly hot breath, Chu Qingyu felt that the fatigue she had felt in recent days seemed to have dissipated, and her slightly weak body had just reached the best state of relaxation and satisfaction. The heartbeat that was beating like a rabbit finally calmed down slowly. Accompanied by the bright moonlight, Chu Qingyu, who had turned to the other side proudly, turned back slowly. Coincidentally, she met Nai Chen's eyes. It's late, go to bed first, my wife. Nai Chen smiled slightly, as if he had expected it. Tisk, good night. Chu Qingyu snorted lightly, and a satisfied and calm smile appeared on her beautiful face. The long eyelashes closed softly, and she closed her eyes. The quiet and beautiful sleeping face was as pure and flawless as a painting under the moonlight. Nai Chen smiled at the perfect sleeping face, and couldn't help but reach out his hand and gently touch the delicate nose tip with his fingertips. Soft and bouncy, it feels quite good. But after waiting for a long time, when Chu Qingyu fell into a deep dream, Rura covered her with a quilt, but Nai Chen did not fall asleep. Instead, he quietly got off the bed and left the room with a creak. In the dark night, a golden envelope sank into the space. It turned out to be a declaration of war. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 469. The spatial power of the fire source stone has been used. In the underworld, Yu Qian, who suddenly sensed the abnormal movement of space, looked around. But she clearly saw that on Yang 11's broken body, a red light slowly emerged, contrasting with the distorted space around. Even the last remaining trace of the fire source stone power in Yang 11's body was awakened, which means Nai Chen may have mastered the fire source stone, and even directly opened the spatial power in it. Yu Qian understood exactly what this meant. Once the fire source stone was opened, it would be equivalent to declaring war on the remaining 7 goddesses. If Qingyu was brought along, it would be fine, but I'm afraid Nai Chen would worry about Qingyu's safety and go alone. If that's the case, Nai Chen, those are the 8 goddesses who have been in charge of the heavens and underworld for many years, you have to calm down. Thinking back to the words Nai Chen left in her ear when he left the underworld, Yu Qian was moved, but at this moment, she was more worried. However, even if she wanted to find Nai Chen at this moment, she couldn't make any sound at all. She could only look anxiously and worriedly at the space twisting like a flame in the air. Holy Lotus Mountain. This is the intersection of the various underworlds heading to the 9 netherworlds, and it is also the jurisdiction of the 8 goddesses. Although it is not located in the underworld, because the lord of the underworld has been in seclusion for many years, the affairs of the various underworlds are almost all under the control of the 8 goddesses. So it is actually this place that makes ghosts from all walks of life really afraid. It's a pity that these 8 goddesses have no reputation as goddesses at all, and they kill cruelly. Even the holy lotus mountain leading to the underworld is regarded as the gate of hell by many ghosts. If you can't pass this place, you will be reduced to ashes and a miserable end. What fault did I commit that I was chosen by the goddesses and taken away from the underworld? Looking at the mountain in front of him, burning with raging fire, like 8 pillars reaching the sky. A little girl with ponytails was in tears, her soul had become burnt yellow and damaged by the flames, and she was getting weaker and weaker. If this continued, it would not be long before she would be reduced to ashes in the burning of the fire. Ah, maybe it's our fate. Many ghosts have said that the souls taken away by the goddesses have become more and more irregular. As long as they are thrown here by the goddesses, unless they can cross the holy lotus mountain, otherwise, their souls will be completely scattered in the flames. Several souls who looked like strong middle-aged men looked at the poor little girl, but could only shake their heads. Ordinary ghosts usually enter the underworld in their original world after death, and only a few souls with heinous crimes will be forcibly escorted here. Unless they can cross the holy lotus mountain, they can save their lives and pass through to the next life. But if they can't, how can we pass this 1 in 100 chance? Several ghosts of middle-aged men sighed and shook their heads. Some of them are honest farmers, some are escorts in caravans, and some are scholars who have finally passed the imperial examination and are dedicated to serving the country. They originally thought that they would never be associated with heinous crimes, but now they have all arrived at this place that looks like a place of execution. The 8 goddesses were once admired and respected by the various underworlds, and the status of the 9 netherworld was even more transcendent and huge. But over the years, the situation has become more and more weird. The policies of the 9 netherworld have become more and more chaotic. The 8 saints have repeatedly punished other underworlds indiscriminately. Just the ghosts thrown under the holy lotus mountain now, I don't know how many of them have suffered injustice, but they have nowhere to complain. Going to the holy lotus mountain is like seeking death, almost dead. But if you stay here, you can't enter the holy lotus mountain, and there is no way to return to the underworld. In the end, they will be worn away bit by bit in the endless flames and go to annihilation. But they have no way to deal with this kind of thing. We may have done something wrong, but child. Several middle-aged ghosts looked at the ponytail girl and shook their heads helplessly. Come on, child, come to us. With us to help you withstand the wind and waves, you may be able to hold on for a few more days. I don't want it, I just want my parents. If I'm alone, what's the point of living a few more days? However, the little girl shook her head fiercely, with no intention of going over. Looking at the 8 desperate mountains that were emitting blazing flames one after another, the girl couldn't help but clench her fists tightly. Tears flashed in her eyes, and she was very sad. She had been holding back her emotions for so long that they finally burst out today. My father was conscripted when I was a few years old and died on the battlefield. I have been without a father since then. Later, a fire killed my mother and me. After much difficulty, our family was finally able to meet in the underworld, but before I could stay in my father's arms for a while, I was forcibly brought here. I am not afraid of death, nor am I afraid of even my soul disappearing. But I just want to be with my parents for once. What did I do wrong? The girl's voice was trembling, and her emotions were obviously becoming more and more out of control. Tears rolled down, and the petite body curled up in fear and helplessness, unable to hide the despair and sadness from the heart. Child. Several ghosts looked at the scene and sighed involuntarily, their eyes became a little sad. They also had family members, and they hoped that even if they died, they could stay with their families for a while. But the reality is often cruel. The 8 goddesses who are high above have never taken their tiny lives like grass into their eyes. Several ghosts opened their mouths and wanted to say something to the girl. But in the end, they couldn't say a word. Because they found that even they didn't know how to comfort the girl. Facing the long road ahead, what awaits everyone here will eventually be a dead end. They can't even make up a white lie. Because several ghosts know very well that no matter what kind of lie it is meaningless now. Don't worry, this is not your destination. You will go back to see your parents. But just when the atmosphere of despair filled everyone's heart, a strange voice suddenly sounded in their ears. The man reached out and gently touched the crying girl's head in comfort. Then, he looked at the 8 mountains that were as tall as pillars to the sky. This is. Several ghosts suddenly widened their eyes in disbelief. Because they suddenly realized that this person was not a ghost. But it was a living being that should not be here at all. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 470. Not only did they feel the anger of a living person they had not seen for an unknown amount of time. What's more important is that the strong yang energy in this person is like the rising sun in the sky, burning brightly. Just looking at it from a distance can make any ghost feel the fear coming from his soul. How could a living being appear here? Several ghosts couldn't hide their astonishment and stepped back in panic. Even the little girl raised her head in surprise. Holy Lotus Mountain is the only place that all major underworlds must pass to lead to the underworld. The only ones who can reach here should be the ghosts detained here, and it is impossible for any living beings to appear. What exactly was posted? Several ghosts who had never heard of such a situation were wary. They have been frightened for a long time, and now they dare not let down their guard at all. Don't worry, I'm just here to find the 7 goddesses, and I have no grudges against you. However, it was completely different from what they imagined. Nai-Chen just smiled flatly, obviously not caring at all. Goddess. Several ghosts relaxed a little, but were still shocked when they heard what Nai-Chen said. In their eyes, rather than being called a goddess, she might as well be called the god of death. The fear of the 8 goddesses was deeply rooted in their hearts, and before they could escape desperately, they never thought that there would be anyone in the world who dared to take the initiative to look for the goddesses. And aren't there a total of 8 goddesses in the 9 Netherworld Palace? Why did he say it became 7? Although this person somehow possesses the magical power to reach here, it seems that he doesn't know much about Holy Lotus Mountain and has no idea how terrifying the 8 goddesses are. After hesitating for a long time, the leader of the farmer's ghost finally couldn't help but step forward to persuade him. Brother, although I don't know how you got here, but the strength of the 8 goddesses may not be as simple as you imagine. Over the years, more than 1 million ghosts have been imprisoned in Shenglian Mountain. There are even some strong men who were monks during their lifetimes. But even so, they were of no help at all. Let alone looking for the goddess, there are very few people who can survive the Holy Lotus Mountain and save their lives. No matter why you are here, if you can go back, you should go quickly. Otherwise, what awaits you may be a dead end. When a ghost is about to die, his words are also good. Having almost completely lost hope of living, the ghosts just sighed and tried to persuade Nai-Chen. Even the little girl's eyes gradually changed. After hearing what Nai-Chen said just now, she originally ignited hope for a moment. But now, although the girl also wanted to see her parents, the kindness hidden in her heart did not want to see anyone die. Since being thrown into this place full of despair, no one has been willing to answer her questions directly, and they can't even bear to tell white lies. Even though he knew there was little hope, Nai Chen was the first person to say that he still had a chance to see his parents. Only. The girl grabbed Nai Chen's trouser leg, and finally gave up her unattainable hope, and persuaded her with hard to conceal sadness. "Thank you, big brother, for what you said to me just now, but I know that I will never see my parents again. Brother, you'd better not take any risks and go back quickly." A heat wave from the Holy Lotus Mountain swept over, and the scorching temperature immediately burned the girl's body with scars. The already weaker spirit body suddenly couldn't help but tremble slightly, and many places began to become more and more insubstantial. Obviously, with the little girl's remaining strength, she wouldn't be able to hold on for long even if she didn't move forward. The burning pain came from all directions one after another, causing her thin willow-like eyebrows to frown, and her little hands clenched into fists, trying her best to endure the incomparable pain. Perhaps at this moment, a stream of pure and extremely rich spiritual energy continued to flow down from the girl's head like an enlightenment. The spiritual energy suddenly nourished every scar on her body like morning dew. Wherever he passed, not only did the painful feeling of being burned by the heat wave dissipate instantly, but the scars on the girl's spiritual body were also rapidly recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. An extremely comfortable feeling spread throughout her body, and the girl, who noticed something strange, immediately spread her two little hands out of curiosity, observing the changes on her body in great surprise. "It has been more than 10 days since I arrived here. So far, she has witnessed countless ghosts struggling in pain, helplessly watching their bodies being dissolved bit by bit. In the end, he was swallowed up by the flames without any resistance. She had never imagined that a spiritual body could actually be repaired, and she could hardly believe this wonderful power. Simply, it is like the blessing of the gods." The girl's originally empty and helpless eyes gradually glowed with light, and hope seemed to be restored in her eyes. She raised her head and looked in disbelief at the only figure that could bring hope. "Big brother. Don't worry, I'm here this time just for those goddesses." Nai Chen just smiled slightly, touched her little head gently and said, "Then next, can you tell me where those goddesses are?" This time, the little girl only hesitated for a moment before completely making up her mind. She raised her hand without hesitation, pointing her finger at the place that countless ghosts who died tragically here feared. "Behind that mountain, they are hiding there." The girl's eyes seemed firm and full of fighting spirit at this moment. The middle-aged ghosts who were watching the scene on the side almost revealed their astonishment that was difficult to conceal. Because they saw with their own eyes what kind of wonderful changes the girl had undergone, they did not stop Nai Chen. This human has power far beyond their imagination. But even so, can he really cross the Holy Lotus Mountain? The blazing fire is like an untouchable taboo for any ghost. If you touch it easily, you will only end up with a miserable end of your soul. Oh! It seems that I should have found the right place. But at the same time, Nai Chen smiled and cast his eyes on the Holy Lotus Mountain after hearing what the girl said. His feet soared into the air, crossing the void. 1 step, 2 steps, 8 huge mountains reaching up to the sky stood before his eyes, like an impassable gate. But as Nai Chen took the next step, boom! The overwhelming pressure rolled in all directions. The flames on the 8 mountains suddenly went out, and huge cracks spread violently. The mountain in the center was shattered. Shock, the love letter was sent to the Empress by mistake. Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 471. Like a sword slashing down. At this moment, the sky opened and the earth widened. The giant mountains collapsed, and the sea of fire split. Between heaven and earth, only one person walked in the air. The Emperor's power was vast and ethereal, and it seemed that no one could stop him. Looking up at the sky, the ghosts under the Holy Lotus Mountain were all in awe, feeling the fear from the depths of their souls. It was not until now that they finally knew the identity of this person. That was, a great emperor. No, it was not even an ordinary emperor. Each of the 8 goddesses had the strength of a great emperor. Even if they were in any continent, they were terrifying beings who could stand at the top. But even so, the sense of oppression that any of the 8 goddesses could exude was completely unmatched. Smashing the holy lotus mountains with one foot, Nai-Chen's appearance was like a demon lord descending to the world. The mighty power would not allow any infringement. The road should be opened for it. Boom boom. As if feeling the terrifying pressure, even the celestial phenomena of the holy lotus mountain were affected. The sky gradually became gloomy, and thunder echoed in the surging clouds. For the various underworlds and the ghosts here, the 8 holy maidens are the supreme and inviolable existence. No one thought that one day someone would come here alone. One person smashed the holy lotus mountain and challenged the 8 goddesses alone. What a big courage! Not only used Yang 11's source stone to issue a letter of challenge to us, but also dared to come here alone. However, the holy lotus mountain is not a place where you can come and go as you please. In this case, let you stay here forever. At the same time, a dazzling light suddenly rose behind the holy lotus mountain. The light column was divided into 7 beams, and each beam of light was actually flowing with extremely strong power. The leading goddess was Yu Miaoxian, the leader of the 7 goddesses. The golden battle suit reflected the dazzling light like the sun, and Yu Miaoxian looked down with a proud look, as if she really had the pride of the 9 heavens goddess. Sister Miaoxian, be careful, Yang 11 died at the hands of this man. The goddess Yan Xian beside her reminded. She was obviously more vigilant about Nai-Chen. He dared to fight 7 people alone, and his strength should not be underestimated. But, to do this, is he a little too arrogant? Be careful. Yu Miaoxian snorted coldly without caring. Dare to set foot on the holy lotus mountain, this letter of challenge will be your end. With a cold shout, she threw the letter in her hand indifferently. The spiritual power turned into a blade, and the letter of challenge was cut into 2 pieces in an instant. As the saying goes, killing a chicken to scare the monkey, she wanted to let Nai-Chen know the consequences of his choice through the end of this letter of challenge. I gave you a letter of challenge, right? Oh, I'm relieved then. Who would have thought that seeing the letter of challenge in mid-air being cut off by a knife, Nai-Chen actually breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that his dog's system would have some hidden function to pit him and turn the letter of challenge into a love letter. After all, these women were totally unworthy of being compared with the empress. Huh. Yu Miaoxian was stunned for a moment because she had never expected Nai-Chen to react like this. She frowned, feeling as if her dignity had been trampled upon. But at this moment, Nai-Chen's eyes suddenly locked onto the 7 people. As the light above his left pupil flickered, his aura seemed to suddenly surge. Sorry, your letter of challenge reminded me that my empress wife was still waiting for me in bed. In that case, let's end it quickly. The hurricane swept in suddenly, and in the strong wind, a raging flame emerged. A long cry echoed on the holy lotus mountain, and the flame turned into a phoenix bathed in flames. The fire feathers burned fiercely, and the power of this phoenix came from the Nirvana phoenix sword in Nai-Chen's hand. The phoenix was reborn, and the sky fire fell. The raging sea of fire seemed to burn the sky. It was overwhelming, even the figures of the 7 goddesses were completely shrouded in it. This person's strength is indeed not to be underestimated. If we want to be safe, we should. No need. Yu Miaoxian quickly rejected the suggestion of retreat. The Lord of the Underworld is still in seclusion, so we must not let anyone who may pose a threat pass through here. More importantly, completely different from the sacred indifference when she just appeared, the strange sneer at the corner of Yu Miaoxian's mouth seemed to have completely lost the feeling of being a goddess. Don't you think that if we add his flesh and blood body, maybe it can speed up the plan of the Lord of the Underworld? What does sister mean? This man is not only strong, I can feel that he definitely has an extraordinary physique. We should do more than just kill him. Also, take him back to the nine netherworld. Sister is right, if he really has a precious holy body, then we must get it. The Lord of the Underworld's plan can finally be accelerated. Yan Xian was surprised, obviously she didn't expect it just now. The moment the fire phoenix swept down, the 7 people showed strange eyes at the same time. Boom! 7 beams of light shot up into the sky and directly penetrated the fire phoenix that fell from the sky. Even the huge body of the fire phoenix trembled. It spread its wings, trying to gather flames and restore the pierced wound. It's a pity that the power of the 7 Paths Emperor Realm Masters cannot even compete with the heaven-level magic weapons. The body penetrated by the golden pillar cannot recover no matter what. In the screams, the fire phoenix finally could no longer fly and fell from the sky. Do it! The falling fire phoenix was shattered into pieces and turned into a sea of burning fire. Under the cover of the fire, 7 figures, led by Yu Miaoxian, suddenly flashed out. Underworld method, 8 locks to calm the soul. Although Yang 11 is dead, Yu Miaoxian is still holding 2 chains. 8 chains condensed towards the center at the same time, when the chains were scattered like tree roots. The flowing black text immediately spread along the chain. The weird aura is getting stronger and stronger, and this feeling of coldness cannot be felt even in the lowest hell of the underworld. Let me go, let me go. I don't want to die yet. The soul lock seemed to be made up of endless resentment. Amidst the shrill roars, the resentment turned into a huge dark chain that ran through the world. It actually bit Nai Chen like a black python. Click. There was actually a law of space hidden on the chain, and it actually firmly locked Nai Chen, who was about to escape into the void. I thought it was so powerful, but it turned out to be just that. Being locked by the 8-lock soul suppressing method, there is no possibility of breaking free. You have been defeated. Yu Miaoxian's expression was full of joking, and he did not hide the strong killing intent emanating from his body. He approached step by step, raising the corners of his mouth, as if he already had a chance to win. Oh? Really? But at this moment, she suddenly felt a completely different aura. Nai Chen, who was firmly locked by the soul lock, raised his head. Those eyes were filled with holy golden light.